So you're always starting with a horizon line. And I think I'll do, just through the middle, and you guys can request that I do something else. But I am going to keep my vanishing points on the paper, just very far apart. But again, like I said, you really probably need to add, paper to extend off the sides to make sure that you're getting, that cone of vision. And also, if you're doing these vanishing points really far apart, you might be thinking, okay, well, my triangle doesn't reach that far, or that's a limitation for you. But you also have a T-square, so you can do some pretty long, angle situations. If you're not good at getting the lines to be straight, you should really be using the edge of your paper to make sure that the lines are perpendicular, so you're not starting with kind of a crooked shape. So let's do C. All of these lines are ultimately going to be erased, but they can also be, if you do these sketches on tracing paper, when you're getting closer to your final sketch, you can also use transfer paper to kind of put it on to your final composition. And I'm pressing a little lighter with the back lines than the front lines. I mean, maybe you can't even notice. Oh, see, this is a crooked line. But just to help me sort of keep straight the, what's in front and what's behind. I was mentioning to you guys that messes me up sometimes. So I'm just lining you can't really see, but I'm lining my ruler up with the side of the paper there. Just so I don't make a crooked line. So I keep the lines, in the foreground. I press a little harder, I press a little lighter on the back lines just to keep it straight, or help keep it straight in my head. So now I'm trying to put a letter in this. So 2 ways you should sort of be visualizing this letter in your head. First, just thinking of it as a flat shape. What should the letter look like? So if I'm doing a C, I want to just kind of sketch it flat first and think about how that would work. Am I doing all this way too small, guys?
No.
Okay, so C. That feels a little ugly. Maybe if the C was more like this. You know what I mean? Like a little bit of a slant to it.
Yeah.
I also want to make sure I don't make this part thicker than this part, you know what I mean? So I'm going to maybe shrink that down a little bit. But I do need the sides of the C to be touching the box at some point. Does that make sense? I'm not going to let it, it's not going to kind of exist inside. I need these kind of anchor points to you know, execute my plan. So I'm erasing some of the what I don't want. So that would be this is my plan, my C plan. And I need to also, though, basically draw the C in perspective. And I've got a kind of shape like this front plane of the box. So the C is going to have to sort of stretch onto this box in perspective. So what's that going to look like? How am I going to make, that transition from this flat to this 2 point? It's really 1 point at the moment, but a perspective foreshortened letter. So what I like to do, and you guys saw this with the other video I made, I just like to draw kind of almost a grid to help me when I'm drawing the actual object. I don't know, maybe this is like over the top, but I think it helps you to visualize what's happening. So I've done an X to help me find halfway. I wouldn't need an X to help me find halfway on just a flat rectangle, but when you're doing the perspective rectangles, you really do need it. So that's why I'm going ahead and doing it on this one, so I have, the same reference points. So I'm going to do that same thing here. The lines can start to get a little confusing, and one thing I sometimes recommend is using a colored pencil to do your trace lines in colored pencil. Maybe do the front of the letter a different color from the back of the letter. When I demonstrate in Procreate, I change colors for every single thing I do, so it's nice to see that, and I'd be happy to demo that way, but I think this is also important just to see the technique. So I'm going to make sure to not confuse those two lines. Do you see which is which? This front line, the one to the right a little bit, is the halfway mark. Now the halfway on here has to go back to the vanishing point and through the X. So that's one of the trickier ones in linear perspective. And then, by the way, and I'm telling you this right now for a reason, you can find halfway the whole way around. If you kind of imagine a ribbon wrapping around the box, could you see how this comes forward, turns in space, and goes back? Turns in space again on the back side of the box. And then when it gets to that point back there, that back edge, it's going to head back forward in perspective. And be here. Do you guys see that? That's a very important concept to understand for a lot of what you're going to have to do with these letters. Okay, so the C. So I'm looking at some different points, and if this is not divided enough, like if you still feel lost with this, you can always divide a certain area again. Do you see what I mean? Like if you're having trouble visualizing where things should be, you can just keep dividing and divide the other box the same way so that you're clear on, however, some parts of the letters just are not that detailed, and other parts, if you're feeling overwhelmed, there might be a section you want to break up even farther. So based off of this, I'm going to try to rough in where this letter is going to be. Past the center point and down just a little bit is where the C is going to start. It's going to end, this angle is going to end up here, maybe a quarter of the way up, like that. So kind of shape. See, the angle's a little different when you get it in perspective. It's going to join up, right around here at the top. And I might even try to center that up a little more. And it's also going to go through this angle right here. So, this is, you might be looking saying, well, this is not that important. I could probably eyeball this and do it just fine, but when it gets into the fonts, like the Times New Roman and those things with the little extra frills and stuff on it, it gets complicated. Now I'm looking at where is this going to intersect over here. I've got an intersection here and here. Again, if I'm feeling like, oh, I don't know quite where to put that line, I might just do another angle to help me. It's about halfway between there. Then it's going to touch here, ellipses. Then down here. And then it's got to get down to this spot. Come back up. And then it's meeting just about in the middle of these two. And the middle would be right about here. So I kind of made some points that I've got to follow. Kind of connect the dots. In here for the inside of the C. It ends kind of above, like up here. It's going to go through there, about halfway through here. So the idea of plotting this letter is really important. I mean, a C, if we're thinking about the complexity of letters, a C is a fairly simple letter to deal with. So, I'm still taking it very seriously, though, trying to get it to look structural and believable. But when you get into some more complex letters, I mean, this is going to help you. That looks way too wide, doesn't it? Do you see how this top part looks so wide and this looks a lot skinnier?
Yeah.
That's just not right. I'm going to change it. I'm going to push this up a little more. Don't you guys think that looks a little better?
Yeah.
I mean, it just wouldn't make sense for this side to be wider than this side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm still, using my brain to do this.
I feel like the bottom one should go a little wider than a teeny bit. Yeah. Yeah.
I also think it's okay for the this distance, the bottom, to be a little heavier than the top. So it doesn't bother me that this would be smaller and this would be a little bigger, but it would bother me if this was wider than that or that was. All right, so I did my best here. I've got my block letter C. Now what I've got to do is basically two things. I've got to make this look three-dimensional, and I've got to do that by projecting, this C, basically drawing it again on the back side of the box. That's tricky because now you've got to draw a second letter with all these other lines in the way. And we also have to figure out how to make it look dimensional, right? It can't just be two C's. We've got to kind of connect those two together to make it a three-dimensional form. And if I just kind of bubble letter or, whatever, sketch down here, a 3D letter C, kind of like the one I've got, what I'm imagining and this is dangerous to imagine sometimes. I'm imagining that I'm going to see sort of the back side of it here. It's going to curve like this, and I'm going to see the inside here. And I don't really know, like, am I going to see, how much of this am I going to see? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it going to disappear behind, or am I going to actually see something happening there? So let's work on projecting that. I'm going to zoom even closer. If this is too confusing up close, I'll zoom back out. But you guys know if I'm drawing an angle, you know I'm going to the vanishing point, right? So, so let's work on projecting this back. And I might actually scoot over so you see more of this vanishing point. Each point that we made on here, remember when I was trying to locate that letter, those are all going to be really good points for trying to pull the letter back in space. You know, a point like this is really obvious, hopefully, that you're going to have to draw, you know, an angle back to the vanishing point. Down here, hopefully that's also obvious that you need to go back to the vanishing point. Here is very tricky because it's really unlucky, but the angle is almost the same as the angle to get back to the vanishing point, but not exactly. So what it's going to leave us with is a pretty thin sliver. Do you guys see that? The sliver? So a thin sliver going back in space. If you're in doubt, if you don't know if something's going to show up or not, just draw it. You know, some things will be invisible, but it's still worth, you know, drawing them. Like this one, if you're questioning it, you know, it's not going to show up. We're not going to see it, but you can always just draw the line to help you with all the other tracing of the shape that you need to do. So, you know, while this seems unimportant in that sense that we will not see this side of the shape, look back here. It's one of the really clearly definable points in terms of drawing that second letter C. This top center point is also pretty important. So now I know that I've got to go from here to here. So that would be from here to here. Do you see why? Now what I don't have is this midway mark, this like angle that I need to intersect with. If you're finding yourself kind of saying, I don't have enough information yet, you can do it. I would recommend doing it lightly, but you can trace that angle again just to have one more set of points to check against. Just make sure you're making that X on the right points, you know, this back side of the rectangle. So now I know I need to go, I'm going to get another pencil here. So I'm going from this point, and sorry, my left hand is shaky, up to this part way on this angle, right? And then over to here. Finding this point on the back side of the box is a little trickier because remember how it's not really lining up with anything? Like if I redraw these lines, it was, well, we actually moved it a little bit, but it's sort of not, it's kind of to the right of center, but we don't have like an exact point. So when I look at this back box, you know, I can follow that diagonal down and try to see where those lines might meet up. Now, don't be confused. This X is not this X. You know, we never drew this mark back here. That would have been a diagonal that goes from the center, remember the center, down to the lower center, like that. Do you guys see that? So going down here, make sure you're keeping track of what the marks are is probably the trickiest thing. I'm going to say right about here is the corner of that. And do you see it also has to be, it can't just be where you think it is on this line. It also has to intersect with this line going back to the vanishing point. So right here is giving us that point. So now I've drawn that part of the letter. That's probably one of the harder spots. As we keep going, we know we have to intersect. Remember these two, this angle that corresponds to this angle. So we've got to intersect somewhere along this line. Where along this line? Well, just pick a point on the letter, draw it back to the vanishing point, and wherever that intersects, now you've got the, you need to have the same thing happening here as there. You can keep locating these basically matching points on the back side of the box and drawing those in. Now this is an easy one. We already found this back point back here. All right. I'm going to keep going, and I'm looking for, this would probably be the next logical spot to try to find. So I'm going to see, where does that point land? I know where it is on this diagonal. Where will it land on that diagonal? Right here. So I'm continuing. Then back here, I didn't draw this yet, but going through the vanishing point, back right where I hit the back side of the box, that's the corresponding point for that. Then I'm headed up here, and now it gets a little murky in here again, but I want to know where. Remember, this line matches. See, you can look at the top two corners, follow it down. So I'm trying to find where, oh sorry, that's not a thing, stopped right here. So I'm trying to find where the corresponding point, this point is on this line. It's right there. Do you see that? And I just have really two more points to go. This point, which I can already see where this hits the back side of the box, not the center line, remember that back line. So I'm going to just connect those. And then I've got to match this angle. There's no linear perspective, rule that's necessarily going to help me match this angle again, but it will help me to find this point on the back side. So I've already drawn a line going back, and I just need to look for where it doesn't really land on the diagonal. It's a little left of the diagonal. So I'm not going to wait till it intersects with the diagonal. I'm going to stop a little short of that. Hopefully that made sense to you guys. This point goes back to here. Now I could keep working on, this whole C back here, but you truly cannot see it. So I think it's a little bit of a waste of time to do that. You're not even going to see this, but if you were to keep doing it, you could finish it out, and that's good practice. Now, so we have the C on the back, we have the C on the front, the relevant parts anyway, but we don't have, like we've connected here, but we don't know where like the actual edge of the C is. Some of you are able to eyeball it and just say, oh, well, that looks right. But the way you actually would find that out is by lining up your ruler on the vanishing point and then sliding it. Don't let that end move. And the first point you hit on the curves, that's where the top of that letter is going to be. doing it the other way, you'll find the bottom of the letter. So I'm going to hold the end of the point of this still on the vanishing point, and I'm going to push it up, 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 up. And the first point I hit, and hopefully you made curves consistent enough that it hits them both at the same time. But I'm hitting here. So would it be helpful for me to erase some lines now and you can see what this is really supposed to look like?
Yeah.
So I can go in and start erasing a lot of these trace lines. I can also erase the things I know are not really going to be there. You want to be very careful doing that though, because if you lose track, then you just erased all your hard work. I'm also going to reinforce the closer lines with a little heavier mark. You can see the lines I pushed hard on and the lines I didn't because I can erase them. All right, so what are you thinking?
Good.
Do you guys want to see another letter demonstrated, or do you want to give it a shot? Turn on your work cameras and I'll watch you guys draw some letters and try to help you through it.
Can you demonstrate one more?
Sure. And for those of you guys who do not want to see one more demonstrated, turn on your work camera and just start drawing a letter, and then when I'm done with the demo, I can check in on you. Anybody have a request for which letter?
D.
D.
Can you demonstrate one where when it's finished you do the crosshatch?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I'm going to put that off though. I'm going to make sure we're all good with perspective, and then we'll do the cross hatching. I was going to do that. Let's not. Let's